Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakudash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to the hopeful elect that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And to all my brothers out here preaching this truth to you, I say Shalom. This is Amatazar from the Chicago camp, coming back at you again with another lesson entitled, This is Exactly Part of Who You Are. This is exactly, all right, part of who you are. So 3 days ago, all right, you had the murders and the wounding of some lawmakers out in Minnesota. Minnesota Representative Hortman and husband were killed, and Senator Hoffman and wife were wounded in politically motivated shootings, Governor Walz says. All right, so you can find this CBS News. All right, this was dated June 16th. All right, today is the 19th. So thank you to the brother, Arrows of Indignation 144, the water, Malak. You always putting up incredible shorts for us all to look at and do lessons from. So we appreciate your ministry, definitely. All right, so we're gonna watch this little short video, and we're gonna see like the newscaster here on the left, this Ginger, all right, and then this guy here on the right. I think he's like part of the, you know, Washington. We're gonna take a look at his comments and her comments, okay. But before we do that, let's read the news article. So I'm gonna read the news article, and then we'll look at the video. All right, and then we're gonna get into some information. It says Minnesota State Rep Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed, and State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were wounded in politically motivated shootings early Saturday. Governor Tim Walz said authorities have also identified a suspect who is still at large. Hortman, 55, and her husband, Mark, 58, were shot in their Brooklyn Park home, while Hoffman, 60, and his wife, Yvette, were shot about 5 miles away in their Champlin home. Investigators say they believe the suspect was dressed in a manner to appear like a police officer. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office says that the Hortmans each died from multiple gunshot wounds. Representative Hortman was pronounced dead at the scene, while her husband died at North Memorial Health in Robbinsdale. Now, what we're going to see here, we're going to look at this short video, all right? And we're going to listen to these contradictive statements, okay? The woman is basically going to say, right, this is part of who we are, okay? And she's appalled at what basically Edomites have resorted to. And the guy comes back and goes, this is not who we should be, okay? And he says that not through violence, but through the ballot box, okay? He says that we're supposed to be settling our differences through the ballot box, all right? But this is who you've always been. And then he speaks about humanity. Well, listen, if you followed this channel, right, I've done probably about 9 lessons on Esau, all right? And beginning in 1863 with the New York draft riots, right, prior to the end of the Civil War, Jake has been massacred. He's been massacred, all right, and many, many times. And if you've been following this channel, I've probably hit about 9 of them. I did the New York draft riots, New Orleans, Memphis, St. Bernard's Parish, Camilla, Georgia, Appalosas, Colfax, all right, the election massacre of 1874, and then also Mississippi, Vicksburg, right? So I did about 9. I kind of went away from it, but I need to come back to it, okay? I need to come back to it. All right, so Lord willing, I'll be able to do that. But let's go ahead and look at this video and then come back with some scriptures.
You said these heinous murders are a reflection of the extremism and political violence that have been fomented in our country. I know, we're all asking. I mean, in Minnesota, I know, and across the country tonight, how something like this could happen in America. I said earlier, and I don't know how you feel about this, that I know people keep saying this is not who we are, and I think part of it is this is part of who we are, and we need to talk about how political violence on the rise is something that's threatening public officials across the country. But how have you been answering that question today to yourself, to the people who have called you and asked?
Well, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, it has become who we are, but it doesn't mean that is who we should be.
Yeah.
We're better than this. And at the end of the day, we should solve our differences in this country not through political violence, but at the ballot box, right? And, I thought my governor said it best today when he said, remarkably just a week ago in Minnesota, they ended their legislative session through compromise in one of the most closely divided state legislatures in the country. They came together, Republicans and Democrats, they resolved their differences through compromise, through finding common ground to actually get something done for Minnesotans. And it's just so tragic here right now in this day and age because we do see the extremism on the far right and we see this violent rhetoric coming from all quarters right now that that legislators can't do their jobs without fearing for their own lives, for God's sake. Is that really where we're at right now? We are at that point. You're absolutely.
Now, listen to what he's saying. I mean, this whole history of this country is steeped in violence. Okay, um, in the state where this happened, this is Minnesota. You had the biggest execution in the history of America with the Mankato 38. The Mankato 38 was in 1862. All right, and basically you had the Sioux Indians, okay, which are Israelites. They're Gad. All right, they basically were displaced from their homes. All right, under a bogus treaty. All right, and they were supposed to be given money and food in return. Okay, but they starved. They were starving. They were losing their children. So when they basically got together and rolled down on Esau because they were going to die, okay, of starvation, because these devils then took their land, they were executed. 38 of them were hung. Okay.
Absolutely right, Jen. I mean, make no mistake about it. This is who we've become. But I want Americans to know it. Every one of your listeners, this is not who we need to be.
It's who you are. It's who you've always been.
And that requires all of us in this moment to stand up and speak loudly against this type of violence to people. Let's center humanity in this conversation for a moment. Two of my close friends were murdered. Murdered today. Two of my other friends were they attempted to murder them. And if it wasn't for lawmakers doing their jobs in Minnesota, I don't know how many more countless friends of mine in the Minnesota legislature would have been targeted today. This is wrong. We have to call it out for what it is. And you know what? There is no doubt that has been fomented by the far right in this country, and extremism and violent rhetoric that exists in the far reaches of the internet that we have allowed to seep into this country as it's now commonplace to just go out and assassinate people that you disagree with. Well, it's bullshit. And I'm just telling you right now, none of this should happen in this country. Let's solve our differences through the ballot box. Let's solve our differences by finding common ground. No one should be going out there and assassinating people they disagree with.
Okay. Common differences through the ballot box. No assassinating. Okay? Well, you should have told that to your fucking people a long time ago. All right. So this is gonna be a two-part lesson without a doubt, because you got these black massacres, right? And like I said, if you've been following this channel, all right, I've already done 9 lessons on it. But let's see what the internet says, okay? Because he said that nobody should be murdered, all right, for their political position. So this is coming out of right out of basically a Google. It says, following the Civil War, freed men, newly freed slaves, faced widespread violence and terrorism as they sought to exercise their newly gained rights and freedoms. This violence was often perpetrated by white supremacist groups and individuals who resisted the changes brought about by the war and Reconstruction. Specific examples and details: Freedmen massacres. It says the Freedmen massacres were a series of attacks on African Americans in the former Confederacy fueled by political tensions and resistance to black voting rights. One example is the Colfax massacre, which I did a lesson on, where a white militia attacked a group of black men, resulting in significant number of deaths. All right. Racial terrorism. Historians like Robert Smalls estimate that approximately 53,000 African Americans were killed through racial terrorism in the post war period. And he's talking about two people. Now, we already know Esau deflates all his numbers, so it was more than 53,000. That's facts. Lynching. The extrajudicial killing of individuals by mobs was another form of violence used against freedmen. Resistance to Reconstruction. The violence was often rooted in the resistance to Reconstruction efforts, which aimed to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved people into society. White Southerners sought to regain their political power and maintain racial hierarchies using violence to suppress black political participation and social advancement. Okay? All right, so there you have it. This is going to be part one of This is Part of Who You Are. Okay? So this is part one of This is who is part of who you are. And on part two, we're going to get these scriptures. All right. So I pray that this lesson has been edifying. Until the next one, Shalom.